Thank you so much, guys, for being here and for staying through. Diane and I are very excited to be able to share our stories with you, and hopefully from this, you'll be able to get some ideas and encouragement as to making that change yourself. Now, you're here for a reason, and that is to figure out if a change is due. Today, with technology advancing so quickly and changing the way we work so dramatically, career paths are becoming less and less predictable. With so much access to information, to alternative education and opportunities, the one thing that we want to say is that career paths do not always have to be ladders and straight paths. A survey conducted in 2019 by the job search site Indeed found that 49%, almost half, of the workers have made a dramatic career shift. Either that may be, for example, from marketing to engineering, or from teaching to finance, etc. And among those who haven't, 65% say that they've either been thinking about or have previously considered switching. Closer to home in Singapore, research has shown that 55% of Singapore graduates are currently working in jobs that are unrelated to their degrees. Today, I want to share my own nonlinear journey with you. And to do that, I first have to rewind back to my college days. Now, prior to college, I had very little exposure to coding or computer science. In fact, the only time I remember typing into a terminal was to enter cheat codes from my computer games, like getting more money for my Sims. Now, my first experience with coding came in the form of C++. When I took an introductory engineering course in my final semester in college. Although I don't remember exactly what I built, I remember very distinctly the feeling of empowerment in being able to type a few lines of code into the terminal and to build something. That was enough to keep me intrigued. But because it was final semester and it was too late to do anything about it, I graduated with a very unrelated degree of economics and philosophy. I came back to Singapore and started my first job as a broker. About 18 months in, sometime in 2016, I saw an opportunity within my company and did an internal transfer to become an analyst. This was my first transition. In that role, I started to do some minor VBA coding. And through that, I started to remember this sense of enjoyment. And as I signed up for online courses and checked out community groups, Facebook's algorithm in advertising figured out that I might be interested in this group called TechLadies. In their Facebook page, I saw that they had an event coming up for a bootcamp graduation party, and something in me decided that I had to go and check it out. Now, in this event, I've heard lots of encouraging stories from these bootcamp graduates. And so after that, with these encouragement, I went home and did some more research about ways to become more involved. Having done some tutorials here and there, I knew that I wanted to be involved in either a bootcamp or sort of a course so that I may be able to work with people, with coaches in the industry, and to build an end-to-end product. And so that same year, I decided that I was going to apply for the TechLadies Bootcamp. I thought this to be a very good testing ground for me, as I committed myself to about 1 day a week for 3 months to do this thing, without really having to compromise my income nor my full-time job. So after the bootcamp, I really took some time, 6 months to be exact, to consider if this was really what I wanted to do. During this period, I found more ways to get involved, like talking to people, going to conferences, volunteering for TechLadies, etc. I really wanted to live it, just to see if I can see myself doing this thing full time. Now, sometime after that 6 months in mid-2018, I decided to take that plunge. And I did that by leaving my job and committed myself to doing a full-time bootcamp with ThoughtWorks. Now, at this point in time, I was living coding 9 to 5. And so after that bootcamp ended, I really thought about the different types of roles that would allow me to do the things that I'm interested in and also apply the skills that I had picked up. Not just the tech stuff, but also the things that I had picked up from my previous role as well. I saw this next role sort of as a reinvention, a new season in my career journey. I know I wanted to spend my time and my days building things that are functional, that are beautiful, while still be able to work with people. In the end, I thought that front-end development would allow me to be critical and logical and creative at the same time. Now, in hindsight, before I had even known about this term, I was already applying very loosely this design thinking methodology. Now, what is design thinking, you might ask? Design thinking is a process to problem solving. It is an iterative approach where it involves breaking down a problem, ideating and coming up with options before finally testing out these solutions. It has a bias towards action, and it works because the solutions are crafted around what is desirable and viable for you. The first step towards this process is empathy. In our context, empathy involves understanding your own needs and motivations, as well as finding out what is and who are impacted by your decisions. Articulating your work view and your life view allows you to gain more clarity about what you find the most meaningful. Understanding your influences can also build a solid foundation into what comes next. Once you have your notes, you organize them to find themes around passions and interests, around your skills and strengths, as well as your limitations and your constraints. The next step, we define the problem. What is the problem you are trying to solve? Are you looking for more flexibility in work hours? Are you looking for more meaning? Or are you trying to pick up a new skill? Our challenge to you is therefore 2 points. To think about what you like and dislike about your work now. It's not enough to just say, I want to leave my job. You really need to think deep and just go in and find in the underlying reasons as to why. Our second challenge to you is to find out what parts of your past and current jobs do you like? What hobbies and activities do you enjoy the most? The next step is to ideate. This is a values alignment exercise where you take your values and skill sets and think about how you want to apply them. Put aside your limitations for this moment and really just throw down as many ideas as you can. The important thing here is to know that no idea is too small nor too big. Think far and wide. Then you converge to focus on one path and then prototype to get clarity around that work that you are interested in. Reach out to your network. Have coffee with people who have careers that match those on your list. You can start by taking a course, going for conferences, or like I did, do volunteering work with your local community groups. That way you can learn quickly whether it's for you. Doing research is easy, but you would never know until you try. The idea is not just to read an article, but to get some real-world insight. Finally, take what you've learned and use that feedback to refine your list or your plan. You can start slow by upskilling your skills in your current role to take up projects that align with your career direction. I went a bit drastic, and that came in the form of leaving my job and committing myself to doing a full-time bootcamp, and eventually landing myself a role as a front-end dev. I'll now hand over to Diane, who will be diving a little bit deeper and sharing her take on this. We will start with this word, composing.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually in Europe today, so it's still a little bit of the morning for myself. Thanks, Min, so much for sharing your story and sharing with us how you've crafted your career. I'm Diane Boettcher, and I've made a lot of changes over the years. I first graduated from college in the United States back in the late 80s. I served in the United States Navy as a flight officer. I've worked in healthcare IT. I've lived in Spain, Germany, Hawaii, Guam, several different places across the United States, and now I live in Singapore. And some might say that I'm further along in my career journey. The challenge, though, is that when we think about our careers as journeys, we often struggle to enjoy the journey, because journeys necessarily have destinations, have endings. And so we end up focusing on that destination or that next rung of the ladder, the next step, the next job. And it's sometimes difficult to enjoy what's happening in your life at the moment. And so I'd like to offer you another framework. I want us to think about life as music, and your career as a symphony. And as a symphony, you'll have different movements. Some movements will be fast, with maybe the strings setting the pace. Other movements may have more bass and drums. Some movements might slow down as you start a family or take care of an aging parent. You don't have to rush to the finale, because a symphony isn't about the finale, and you get to play along the way. You get to enjoy each movement. You get to enjoy each part. So how do you know when it's time to wrap up the movement that you're in? And building on what Min shared with the design thinking framework, this evaluation is a continual process. I'd like to share with you a concept called ikigai, and it might also be called an avocation. So the avocation is a thing that is what we are called to do. And if it's what you're doing, what you're playing as your avocation, it'll have the following components. You'll have enjoyment, which might simply be described as doing work you enjoy doing. It's work that you would do even if you weren't getting paid. It's the work that you do when you wake up in the morning and you're like, yippee skippy, I get to go do this today. Reward, well, that's the work that you get paid for. Most of us have to make our way in the world. We have to pay for food, rent, clothing. Our salary, our pay can also serve as a kind of form of external validation, a statement that what we're doing is valued by others. And for some of us, pay is actually a way of kind of keeping score. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Just know that that's what you're doing with it. Doing work that you're skilled at is work that you're good at. And doing work that we're skilled at makes work easy and enjoyable and gives us a sense of accomplishment. And finally, we have fulfilling our purpose when we believe the work that we do needs to be done in the world. That's because our experiences and our lives have taken us through different parts and different movements, we each have a different belief of what needs to be done in the world most right now. And it gives us each a unique sense of purpose. So when we do work that we enjoy, that we can be paid to do, work that we're good at, and work that we believe needs to be done in the world, well, that's joy, that's ikigai. And realistically, we might not be able to hit all 4 circles at the same time with the same work. We may find that our job, our career, hits 3 of the 4 notes, and that might be enough. That may be what we need at that time. And then we find that 4th note in another part of our lives. First, though, we must discern some of these things. What do I enjoy? What am I good at? What will people pay me to do, and what needs to be done? And again, as you play your symphony, You may find that you enjoy different things, or that you're able to be paid less, or maybe need to be paid more at different times in your life. So this discernment is an exercise that we must revisit from time to time. Probably not every day, that would be a bit exhausting. However, annually, we can take some time to think about the music that we're playing and whether we're still in that state of joy, in that state of ikigai. So let's take a minute to talk about what it feels like, what it looks like when something is missing. So when we don't enjoy the work, misery follows. We're working for the weekend. We're planning each vacation, only laughing and smiling when we're not on doing our paid work, when we're goofing off. Work is miserable. We dread Mondays and say things like, thank goodness it's Friday, or that's why they have to pay us, because it's work. If you're missing purpose, that's when you're likely to feel discontented. And you may not notice it for a while if this is the only thing that's missing. After all, you're enjoying the work, you're getting paid, and you're good at it. And that's pretty solid. So discontent might be that nagging feeling of, is this all there is? Or what's the point? If you're missing pay or reward, then you're likely to be stressed. Unless you have another way to pay the bills, you'll be spending much of your time worrying about how to cover an emergency expense or even just your monthly needs. And finally, if you lack skill at the job, you're likely to be frustrated. It's tempting to think boldly, well, I can do anything I put my mind to. And that's true to an extent. However, if you lack the training, if you can't do the job well, you're spending much of your time, much of your day working longer and possibly harder than others, and that can be incredibly frustrating. In these cases, you can invest time and energy to learn a new instrument, or you can find an instrument that's better suited to your current skills. So again, if your job lacks more than one of these elements, more than one of these notes to your music, then you should ideate that part of the design thinking, that ideation of what to change. Now, you can always just pick up a side hustle or side helping, volunteering in your community with elderly or with children in your place of worship. That can give you a real sense of purpose or a joy at using your skills. A second job, perhaps online, can provide additional pay or use of your talents. A hobby may give you the tune that enjoys you to do the work that you enjoy. If your current situation is only missing one note, one element, then a side hustle, volunteering, or hobbies might be the right tune to play. Of course, when we're thinking about changes, most of us are thinking about something with our paying job. So you can stay in the same industry, perhaps even in the same company, and simply change roles. I've been at Microsoft for 5 years now, and although I've held the same title throughout that time, my actual role has changed twice. You can change companies. In 2020, we're finding more and more companies are baking purpose into what they're doing, and that might be the right tune for you. You can stay in the same industry and find a company whose mission speaks to you. Changing industries, as Min has, is another way to modulate the key of your symphony. You can pick up a new instrument, a new skill, a new tune. Also, changing geographies, moving to a new country or new city can be the change that you need. I moved from the United States to Singapore about 1.5 years ago, and it has been a wonderful movement in our lives. None of these are mutually exclusive. You can change all of them at once, although that might be the toughest way to transition. So let's talk about some options of the prototyping. As you work to create joy in your life, as you work to build that next movement, you can prototype to expand the universe of the things that you're good at. Education and training expands your capability as well as help you discern what you enjoy doing. Another consideration is, if you're looking at doing a new role like code development, for example, you'll need to expand your network. After all, to get paid for that new skill, you have to be able to convince someone that you have this new skill. And professional organization, as Min has shared, is just amazing ways to do it. And going to the monthly luncheons and participating in the events is great. The other option, though, is to volunteer. You're really elevating your profile when you take that next step and you volunteer with others in your industry, because you'll not only build your network, you also build your reputation. A woman I know volunteered at a monthly luncheon at a professional organization, and she worked the registration desk, so just checking people in as they showed up. And she was targeting a particular company to go work for. So when the person from that company showed up and checked in, she introduced herself, mentioned that she'd like to learn more about the company, and sat next to them at lunch. So when you're getting references then from people that you've worked with, even in volunteer capacity, that's exponentially more powerful than references from people you just met. Following the prototyping, then you're going to test, right? And you're going to need testing criteria. So anytime you test, you can have criteria. So I recommend 3 categories of criteria. The first category are the things that have to be true. Is it location? Is it pay? Is it company size or company mission? What are the things that are the absolute must-haves for you? Second, what things can't be true? Perhaps like me, you don't want to be in sales. I've been a quota-carrying sales person and did not care for it. It's just not who I am. So I can take a new opportunity that's going to grow a business, but if it carries an individual sales quota, I'm not going to do that. What are your absolute must not haves? And then finally, what things are negotiable? What are the things that maybe you want to work from home a few days a week, but it doesn't have to be every day working from home. Maybe you enjoy traveling for work and would like a role that has a fair amount of travel, but that's not necessarily a must-have. So what are the criteria in that category? So as opportunities emerge for you through your networking, through your prototyping, then you'll be able to test these opportunities for the right fit for you. One last framework to think about while you're making a change is how you're going to need to step into learning. Learning is inherently uncomfortable because when we stay in our comfort zone, that's, well, it's comfortable, right? Stepping into learning means that we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Being self-aware of your current capabilities and your current gaps will help you to discern how far you can step out without stepping into a danger zone. And the danger zone is where maybe too much has changed too quickly and you put yourself, maybe your team at risk. For example, as cool as I think it would be to run the UI team at Xbox, that role is so far from my current capabilities. I couldn't possibly be successful, much less even land the role. If I want to play that tune, that instrument, stepping into the learning zone and learning a few things at a time can help craft the right competencies to be successful. Of course, you can and should be aspirational in your composition. Simply understand how to transition from one movement to the next.
We want to clarify that while there's nothing wrong with the traditional career path, it is by no means the only way. Look at it this way. Your assets are your skills and talents, and they transcend industries and job functions. Yes, change is scary, and it takes a lot of courage to do it. There's so many interior barriers that you yourself have to jump through first. But as Diane has mentioned, life is music, and your career should be a symphony. Everything is unfamiliar until you start exploring. Acknowledge your constraints and find ways to work around them. So, give yourself permission to explore different things. Get curious, try something, reflect, rinse, and repeat. You might just surprise yourself. Diane, anything to say?
Yeah, the other thing that I would add is, to be thinking about, don't say no to yourself. Go ahead and step out, step into that learning zone, step into that unknown. Don't be the one who holds yourself back. Too often I hear people say, well, there's no way I could get that role. There's no way I could do that thing. But trust the people around you. Trust the support system that you have, and go ahead and say yes to yourself and challenge yourself to what you really love to do and where you can find that joy, that ikigai, and hit all 4 notes in your symphony.
Great. And with that, we hope you find our presentation useful. And we want to leave you with this last thing. What will your story be? Thank you.